Lawmakers from both parties are criticizing President Trump's temporary travel ban for 7 Muslim-majority countries. Pennsylvania Republican Charlie Dent spoke out against it. The congressman's district includes Allentown, which is home to one of the country's largest populations of Syrians. Over the weekend, a Syrian family hoping to relocate to his district was turned away at Philadelphia's airport and forced to return to Qatar, their last stop before the U.S. In a statement this weekend, Congressman Dent wrote, "This order appears to have been rushed through without full consideration to the wide-ranging impacts it will have," and he urged the White House to halt enforcement of the ban. Congressman Dent is with us now from Capitol Hill. Congressman, thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks, Elaine, for having me on the program.
I'd just like to ask you to clarify your position. Are you against the rushed implementation, as you call it, or are you against barring entry from the 7 Muslim-majority countries?
Well, what I said is, first, we should stop enforcement of the action of this order. It was rushed through. It was not well thought out. It was not properly considered. The various federal stakeholders, there should have been an interagency review. The Departments of Defense, State, Homeland Security, and Justice should have been much more involved than they were. I get the sense that they didn't have much participation at all in developing this. We've learned about translators, too, who were also being detained. And, we just passed the Defense Authorization Act last year, and we tried to facilitate the entrance of translators who have helped us in Afghanistan and Iraq and elsewhere. So I'm very concerned about the order. We have threats all over the world, not just in those 7 countries. There are many people in Europe who are already radicalized, citizens of European countries who can enter the United States through the visa waiver program with a simple passport, with no vetting at all. So I think we have to take a little bit more comprehensive approach to this issue.
White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer was asked about the process of the implementation of this executive order. And one of the things he said, Congressman, is that, in effect, they needed to act quickly because of the threats President Trump believes this country is facing, and that the reason why this was, in fact, pushed through so quickly is essentially, at one point he said, to not telegraph to people who might be looking to do harm to Americans that in fact this policy was coming, so that there wouldn't be a rush, essentially, he suggested, of people looking to do harm into the United States. What would you say to that?
Well, all I can say is that the people that I was dealing with, the Asali family of Allentown, Pennsylvania, a Syrian Christian family bringing 6 of their relatives over, they had been in process since 2003. They were not refugees. They were immigrant visa holders, and their green cards were going to be issued very shortly upon their arrival. All I can say is, these people were in transit. In fact, they were in the air when this order was signed and then apparently implemented. So it was not done fairly. I mean, I understand the need for security. Believe me, I served in the Homeland Security Committee for some time. But this Asali family is not a threat. They're not a threat. So I understand if there's a specific threat that they were concerned about addressing, then by all means address that threat and deal with it. This was overly broad and overly rushed and implemented in a very haphazard manner, and I think that really is my principal objection. And I think that they have to get this right. Again, the principal stakeholders, in my view, were not properly consulted.
Given what you just laid out and what happened to one of your constituents, what do you think a more deliberate, thoughtful policy should look like?
Well, I think we should look at the visa waiver program further. I don't want to get rid of the visa waiver program. I support the visa waiver program, but that is where our most immediate threat is, coming from those countries, particularly European countries. We can do that. We can further look at countries that are the 7 that were identified, and perhaps others, to see if we can enhance vetting and screening. But it has to be done in a way that doesn't set down religious litmus tests. Obviously, we can't have a ban on Muslims. That would fly in the face of our First Amendment and our Constitution. So I think we have to be just more thoughtful about how we go about vetting. But let's get together, the White House and Congress, and maybe we can come up with an approach that could satisfy everyone.
Most of the Syrians in your district are Christians. President Trump has said that he'd prioritize the settlement of minorities, including Christian refugees, over members of other religious groups. Do you support that as a policy?
Well, I believe under current law, I think with respect to Iranian refugees, we already do give a preference to persecuted minorities. And we're not simply talking about Christians, we're talking about the Druze, Yazidis, and there are other groups who are persecuted in the Middle East. But at the same time, we also understand that not all refugees are religious minorities. Many refugees are also Sunni Muslims, particularly in Syria as well as in Iraq. So again, I don't support a ban on Muslims, and I don't support any kind of a registry either. So we have to do this fairly. We're going to get the refugees of all different faiths and ethnicities and backgrounds.
So you want to halt enforcement of this ban. Would you back Democratic legislation to try and overturn it?
Well, at the moment, it seems that the courts have spoken, and the courts have essentially said that the order is not being implemented or not being enforced. So for the moment, we seem to have this thing halted. So I'm prepared to look at legislation, but I don't think we need to do that in a rushed manner either. We should do that very deliberately. But for the moment, it seems that this order is not being enforced.
Congressman Charlie Dent. Congressman, thanks very much for your perspective. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Elaine. Really appreciate your time.